U.S. leadership in the development and use of AI systems, both by private sector and the government, is essential for our global economic competitiveness. We should work to ensure that government can adopt and deploy these tools to help improve American lives. But as we do so, we must ensure that we are prepared to address the potential risk and harms that AI systems can present.
That was Senator Gary Peters, who is chairman of the Governmental Affairs Committee, talking about how artificial intelligence could benefit government work, but will also require some regulation. New guidance on federal government use of AI will be released this summer as the impact of the latest advances in artificial intelligence spreads across industries. Joining us now is what has become our artificial intelligence panel. Please welcome CEO of Rebrand Cities and founder of Prompt Camp, Hodge Flemings, as well as COO and Ops technologist. I'm going to speak today. This is Cynthia Respert, as well as creative technologist at the company, Dave Linebree. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming back.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're excited to be here.
So I'm excited to have you here. We've had some exciting conversations before on this very show about all of the exciting advances in AI. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot that's changing, but we are starting to hear more concerns out there, more red flags being raised. Hodge, do you notice that as well? Have you been seeing those alarm bells go off kind of at an increasing pace?
Yeah. I think that anytime you have a new technology, especially when you look at a new impasse of the industrial, I guess, like revolution, right? And so the government has an interest in making sure that they're trying to think about the greater good, right? But even in terms of the government doing that, there has to be balance, right? So are they going to focus on national security? Is it going to be on economic competitiveness, which you have job creation? Are you going to look at transparency so that people know that they're actually talking to AI, right? And so I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of, or all the stakeholders kind of lie and where things go from here.
Now we're seeing people who are not in any way opposed to AI. I mean, the OpenAI CEO was there in Washington, basically inviting the government to regulate his industry. Did that surprise you at all to see that?
It did not, and I was glad to see it. I'm at a place where I am excited about the innovation that's coming, but I also believe that there are levels of responsibility that are happening now, right, for the government, for corporations, but then also personal responsibility. We don't go throwing our social security number in ChatGPT and say, you know, my data's at risk, right? But at each level, there has to be an intentional, intentionally addressing those levels.
Yeah. Dave, what do you think about the concerns we should have? I imagine you probably share some of them with the Sam Altmans of the world. There are some things you just have to recognize. This is a risk.
Sure. There's deep fakes, and I mean, Apple's going to come out with this September the ability to clone your own voice and use it to have, make your own podcasts that way. And I mean, there's already a lot of apps for that, but it's becoming already integrated. And we weren't surprised because NIST, who's basically like the ISO for data tech and for IT, they have been making standards and working on this for, what did you say, it was 2 years now?
At least since 2000, for sure.
Yeah, they've been working on it, and so it's pretty far along. The biggest risk to us, like Hodge said, is transparent. I think transparency is the biggest one.
Do you guys have any concerns about what regulation might look like, or any idea of what a reasonable regulation would be?
So one thing that I would think about is that anytime you get the government involved in anything, you start to get red tape. You start to, so when you start to talk about regulation, if it's over-regulated, then now it's going to stifle innovation.
Yes.
If you have under-regulation, what's going to happen then is that you then have corporations who might not self-regulate, right? And because now you're looking at them operating against their economic self-interest. And so I think having a balance of regulation, self-regulation, and those kind of things become important, but also as people, just like I wouldn't look at the FDA and say, anything that they say is good for me to eat, I'm going to actually eat. I still need to have some type of responsibility in terms of how I'm going to approach it as well.
Yeah. What does it actually look like going forward? I mean, if these regulations are coming down, I look back to when the internet came out, when social media really started to take off. Do you think that our current government, whether Congress, the White House, whoever, are they equipped to understand and deal with this technology? Most of us, it's brand new.
Yeah, this is local, right? No.
Yeah. Well, we're
But,
streaming anywhere.
yeah. But what, oftentimes the government is behind in technology, right? In terms of processes. We do a lot with grants and things like that, and we have to fax things, and their systems may not be up to date. So I agree with that concern, but I think there is a co-shaping of this regulation. I think it has to, just like Sam Altman went to Congress, there has to be a collaboration of the two to have the right people at the table to shape this and not restrict it to, like Hodge said, kind of just thwart all of the innovation and the progress that we've made. The toothpaste is out of the tube, right? We can't put it back. I read something where someone was suggesting just shut it down till after the election. And right now, we can't unsee what we've seen, right? So we have to keep moving forward, but how do we do that wisely to make sure it's equitable, to make sure it's fair, to make sure it's just, to make sure we understand, we have latent biases in society. Therefore, we'll have latent biases in the data. So how do we unearth those things and become transparent and make sure it's safe?
Yeah. Cynthia mentioned the election. You mentioned deepfakes earlier. I mean, how do we even wrap our heads around what we are headed into with this next election?
It's really hard. It really is.
Yeah.
Right now, I know that you were asking about what's going to look like. Copyright Office has already been putting out talks. They have one more coming up on May 31st. You can watch them live. If you like watching government lawyers talk about copyright law
Well, who doesn't?
for 3 hours, because each one's about 3 hours long.
No summary.
Yeah, it's rough to go through, but the gist of it so far is if you've made something and it's 100% machine made, and that counts your prompt, there's no copyright protection. If you have part of it, like a good example was in September, there was a woman named Katrina Kashtanova. She was the first person to get a copyright on Midjourney art. She made an 18-page comic book. A couple months later, government goes, wait a minute, you wrote it, that's cool, but Midjourney did the art, so we're not going to copyright that part of it, only the human part. And I think we're going to see a lot of that weird mixing for a while until they get this straightened out, where there's going to be asks from lawyers of, well, how much did you do and how much did the machine do? And we need to know exactly what that separation is.
It's a convoluted and kind of complicated discussion, though. It starts to get pretty philosophical. Maybe you use it as a tool to help you write or create something. But even prior to any AI, isn't everything derivative? Don't we all? Aren't we all influenced by the things we see and the music we hear?
Artists have said for years is you steal from one artist, you're a hack. Steal from 100, you're a genius. Well, this is stealing from 1 billion.
Right.
Right.
And I think the key point there is if you input something into AI and I do it, we're going to come up with 2 totally different outputs because of your skill and your creativity and your innovation and your genius. I'm going to use mine, and we're going to have 2 totally different outputs. So I think there's a reframing of what is original. We're using a tool. The output would be 2 different things if we did it together, right? Yeah. So I think there's a paradigm shift of what is original.
We're seeing this conversation a little bit in Hollywood with the writer's strike right now. And again, it's a tough conversation. You were ready to chime in there, Hodge.
Yeah. I was going to add to that. Every design is a redesign. So there's nothing in the world that's original. So we've looked at stuff where we have absorbed, we have learned from other people, whether it's going to a museum, whether it's going into Instagram. Now, do we attribute that information or to the source that we got it from? But we still learn. So now we're saying that since a machine is learning, but it all depends on, is it learning or is it stealing? Is it absorbing? And so I think the framing of that becomes really important, and people have an economic interest in what side of the aisle that they're on. And so I think it's going to, but also, and again, I'll close with this, is that the technology or the innovation is going to move faster than legislation, moves faster than case law, and so they're not going to be totally aligned at any point.
Right. We've seen it move so fast in the past few months, and we know how quick Washington and a legislature tends to move. All right, when we return, we will talk about how AI is already impacting several other industries, and we'll discuss whether it could actually lead to excessive job loss.
I don't
don't know if there's been a better time to start a brand new news operation.
The Newsroom was pretty much starting from scratch.
It's fresh, it's innovative.
Lots of energy, lots of passionate reporters.
Knowing what we're starting here puts so much joy in my heart.
We have reporters who are embedded in these communities.
Many people throughout St. Clair Shores have been fighting to save this water tower.
If there's a miracle out there, get a hold of me.
We are part of the neighborhood. Our newsroom is part of your neighborhood.
Residents here on Stansbury say they are fed up with all this flooding that keeps happening.
We shouldn't have to live like this.
Telling the stories that otherwise nobody would know about.
Now, AJ, you went to the downtown boxing gym and you really got to see how this gym is impacting kids' lives.
Yeah, Chris, as soon as I walked in the building, it was very uplifting.
It's a boxing gym, but it's more than boxing. You know, we do homework. We help them with the SAT.
When it comes to the weather, it's forecasting what's going to fall on your driveway, when is it going to happen, and how might it actually affect your day-to-day life.
Hundreds of people continue to call in reporting problems throughout the county.
Cleanup crews working all throughout Metro Detroit.
Get them down and get them cleaned up.
Local news to me means we're in your community, we're telling stories that matter to you, that affect you, that maybe we can get change and things done in your community.
She was born without a right arm, and then her legs didn't grow, I guess, the way that they should have.
But for 20-year-old Fortin High School alum Sumaya, she doesn't let that, or anything else for that matter, get in her way.
So you have a favorite button over there?
Yeah, you want to press it?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and...
This is my favorite.
I hope everyone watching that piece in particular says, I want to help that little girl and help that family and help get her to college.
Well, we are rethinking the way local news is done in the 21st century and how to tell the most important stories in a compelling way.
You can get news anywhere, but for us, we're a fresh face with a new perspective, and we're trying to make a difference in the community to tell stories that matter to you.
I think we're here to listen and actually hear what you're saying, and we're putting together a newscast that will show that.
I want to tell those people's stories because it's needed. Detroit is ready. Get ready, because here we come.
Reporting in Dearborn Heights.
Live in Wayne County.
Reporting in Adrian.
Live in Livonia.
Reporting from South Lyon, Kelly Vaughn.
CBS News Detroit.
Well, if you really read the writer's position carefully, it's not about creativity, it's about money. What they're saying is, if you use AI to create a show, an episode, you gotta pay a writer. And if we as writers use AI and don't tell you, you gotta pay us as writers, you know. And it's a question of who's going to be using AI first. I personally think the writer's going to be using it first, you know. And then they'll be saying, no, AI didn't write this. But what they're afraid of isn't losing creativity, because a lot of them don't have it in the first place, or freedom. They're just afraid of losing money.
That was director and screenwriter Paul Schrader. And while Hollywood writers are asking for higher wages, some are concerned about the use of artificial intelligence in writing films and TV shows. But job loss to AI isn't just a concern for Hollywood, it is a concern across all kinds of industries. Once again, we are joined by Hodge Fleming's Cynthia Respert and Dave Linnebry from Rebrand Cities, which is an information technology company that trains people to use artificial intelligence tools. And I say tools, Hodge, because as we've discussed a number of times before, that's the way you see it. This is nothing more than a tool, right?
Yes, so it's a tool. AI is not new. Everybody is excited because it's now in the hands of common, everyday people. And so I think it is really, every single person has to really understand how they're going to operate in the presence of AI, because it's not going away.
That's right.
And so I think there's a personal responsibility to figure out, okay, how do I preserve my job? Or how do I prepare myself for the future? Because the future of work is changing. It's not going to be the same. And so I think if I'm a person, which I am obviously, I'm now looking at my job in a different lens. I'm not looking at it the way I used to. I'm looking at, okay, how am I going to operate down the road in the future, right? And so figuring out what that looks like, and there are things that I just don't like doing in my current job. can I be more efficient? Can I allow the machine to do things that the machine does? And we get to what we call non-existence to existence. That is the part that the human does, the dreaming part. That's the part the machine can never do. That's the part that I think as humans we need to lean into.
That's right.
So when it comes to writing, creating film, creating art, it seems that is, it's uniquely human, right? It seems like that's what you're getting at. A machine is not going to be able to write something that's going to move me in the way that a human could write something, or at least we haven't seen that yet, right?
Well, I think it's possible, right? Because the machine is learning from the input from, like Hodge said, the human. So it's only a tool, just like in the hands of the wrong person, guns or money would bring about detrimental consequences, right? So this tool needs to be prompted, it needs to be fed data, it needs to be fed information. So you can shape the information to produce the output that you want, right? So it's learning from a larger data set, including your influence and your information.
So it still does need a lot of prompting, a lot of assistance from humans. I've tried it out. I know you guys use it all the time. We all know it's not, you can't just say spit out an Oscar-worthy picture and it's not going to just give you an amazing script. You have to prompt it a little more than that. Dave, how far do you think we are from being able to do that?
Probably by the end of the year.
Whew.
At the rate it's going.
So, in your opinion, should the writers in Hollywood, should people be as afraid as some are?
I think they should be afraid if nothing gets, if a government doesn't move fast enough. But it seems like everyone's really paying close attention to this in the government. They really are working on this, and they're not letting it slip. They got good people on it. If you watch any of these, like 3-hour copyright things, they have great conversations, and they really, really are asking the right questions, which is important. If you don't know what questions to ask, you're just going to have some old guy up there going, I don't like the Facebooks. And it's like, we don't want that again. We want people who actually understand this and understand, look, everything you do is going to be affected by this. Everything.
And people have to also understand, we live in a capitalistic society, regardless. So at the end of the day, economics are going to be king, and people are going to make decisions that are in their economic interest. And so there is, so the little guy typically, or young lady gets squashed sometimes.
Yeah. You know, is it a fair comparison to look at other industries that have been upended in our lifetime recently? You know, we all have the ability to plan vacations on our phone, and we use GPS, and I don't hear people crying for the, you know, the travel agents out there or the, you know, the people who make maps.
Do you remember when Photoshop came out?
I do not.
Okay, that was I was one of the early users, 1988.
Okay.
Photographers everywhere threw a hissy fit for the first couple of years, and then they adopted it.
Yeah.
And now it's normal. You have to use.
Now it's a key tool for all.
Yeah, you have to use Photoshop. You don't. Yeah, and but they were terrified that the entire industry was going to be destroyed. They were throwing fits, writing angry letters, writing terrible things about it. They were, and now we're getting the same thing again. It's like, but we weather these things and we adapt. We always do. We, you know, this goes all the way back to the Middle Ages when armor makers were suddenly upended by the invention of firearms, or you know, Gutenberg's press, that took 400 years to take over, but a lot of these things, they call them disruptive technologies for a reason.
That's right.
But we always manage to figure it out. Humans just get shaken up for a little bit and then kind of settle down and go, okay, I get it now.
When you consider the pace that this has evolved over the past 6 months or so, I believe that's right around when ChatGPT was released. And since then, we've got GPT-4. We've seen it kind of spun off into other technologies. What is this all leading to? What is the latest on ChatGPT? Where are we at with that?
Well, I would say, you know, I mean, kind of like where I see things going is that now people have to really look at what are the workflows, what are the ways to be able to use these tools in concert with something else, and then looking at their own human genius and figuring out, okay, how does this apply to the work that I do? Not to everybody else, not to every use case in the world, but how does this apply to me so that I can use this so I can get the outcomes that I want to get? And I think that if we get focused on that, I think that people will see that there is tremendous benefit, but there is a dark side to it, but there's tremendous benefit. But I think they should look at how this applies to their own work and their own stuff that they do.
And what are some of those things that are uniquely human? What are some of those things that we can lean into and that we should all focus on so we're not replaced by machines?
Creativity.
Okay.
For one. So these redundant tasks, the machine can take care of those, right? The things that that we've all said before that you don't want to do. Now it frees your mental space up. I'll have a quick story. I'm the tab organizer on my laptop. And recently I closed them all and I thought I was just gonna perish. Like, oh wait, this is what I was doing. But then it just gave me a fresh start. So basically all of that mental capacity, it took up storage on my computer, right? Yeah. So I freed all that up and now I can start and have a free mind and create. Right? We are creative beings where we can speak and things happen. We put the work behind it. Now we can lean into our genius that we were born with. And everybody has it. We just have to find that lane. To your point about the job loss, there will be, right? We talked about it last time that 97 million jobs be created, 85 million will be eliminated. So that's kind of washing out, but there's some information out now that at the turn of the decade, there'll be 300 million jobs impacted by AI.
Wow.
So what do we do? That's our urgent call to say, how do I help facilitate this transition? We're at an inflection point in history that we can't turn back from, right? So how do I participate in this? How do I help usher this in to move society forward? I mean, nobody wants to go back to VHS tapes and flip phones and telegrams, right? So I think it's how do I participate and engage in this? And then there's stats to this. Millionaires will be made in the next 6 to 12 months. Yes. Those that jump in head first.
Yeah, and Haj, you're quite literally with your company working to engage people with this technology. So tell us more about that. How are you helping to prepare people?
So we've been doing a series of prompt camps. We just been doing a 2.5-day prompt camp in Miami. So we're doing virtual prompt camps. We're doing prompt camps in person. We're working to train agencies, creative agencies, work with schools to be able to understand this fast-moving tool so that they can understand and prepare to future-proof themselves. We're also getting into the music space. So we did something called Rap versus AI, where we're now having human rappers in Detroit compete against AI rappers. And we're headed to Microsoft's Build Conference tomorrow to talk about this with all the top people in tech. So we're super excited about this stuff, and as a team, we're working hard every day to be able to make sure that we can be a part of helping to make people better.
So the music conversation, let's have fun with that a little bit. That is a concern for a lot of people. If this AI can rap just as well as my favorite rapper, will our future music just be coming from machines? What do you think?
So so let's look at this. What if your favorite musician who is no longer alive was able to create music with a new artist that exists today? That could create something that has never before existed. And so what about those opportunities where you're not taking something away from somebody, but you're adding to what could be created? And then from that, money could go to a foundation to help drive things. If you look at Chad Boswell, right? He passed away, and there's stuff that he wanted to do after doing Black Panther. He's no longer here, and he's not going to be able to direct funds from the grave. But this tool with music, we could actually do that, connect it to a foundation of somebody who used to exist, and create brand new, fresh content, and create revenue streams to have real social impact.
Wow, it's wild to think about all of it. You were going to chime in?
Yes, because we're excited about this project.
Yes.
So the other part of Rap versus AI is an educational mission. So it's a way to have immersive experience. So listeners of that genre, students of that genre can learn and get their hands dirty in that AI technology, but then have a curriculum on the back end of that to really teach you pathways, digital pathways of how you really can maximize it. So it's really not only just the music, but we go beyond that for educational purpose too.
Very cool. So for those who want to witness this battle, where can we find this?
So if you go into YouTube and just do a quick search for Rap versus AI, or you can go to rapversusai.com, and the video is already on there.
Rapversus.ai.
Rapversus.ai.
Rapversus.ai. Yes.
All right. I'm sure some AI will help us find it. That's why it's in there. All right. Thank you so much to Haj Fleming, Cynthia Resbert, and Dave Linnebry. Appreciate your time, all of you.
Thanks for having us.